Hello everyone and welcome to a new video from Your Overwatch. I'm Eddie the Chump and today we'll be talking about role select as part of the Overwatch matchmaker. Now we've mentioned this a few times over the last few days, but we thought it best to take the time to really unpack the idea, as in light of Scott Mercer's interview on Seagull's stream from Gamescom, there are a few things to really think about. Firstly, it seems like internally at Blizzard, there are no plans to make searching by role a function in the game that the player has control of. It was enlightening to hear Scott mention the reason why they're hesitant. It's because the way they see a voluntary system like that functioning would be that it would require them to limit people swapping mid-game. Interesting, isn't it? In the pursuit of improving match quality through role select, they can only see that working if they go against one of the core principles of the game, and that's the tactical swapping of heroes or roles in the face of changing circumstances. In a lot of ways, that is Overwatch, so it's not that surprising that they're reluctant to do that. However, he did also mention that they're doing things with the matchmaker under the hood to try and make every match as well-rounded and competitive as possible. Scott implies that Blizzard are looking at better ways to balance teams and deal with one tricks in Season 6. Now that throws up some ideas to examine. We'll now look at this issue in a pro versus cons framework. Every system has its flaws after all, and despite what people might think, role select is not some magic salve to all the problems inherent to Overwatch's competitive matchmaker. So what are the positive impacts of stricter role-based matchmaking? Well, the biggest is ideally it would form teams with a more rounded base of skill sets with which to form workable team comps from. We've all been in matches where there are several people who all main the same hero, or everybody plays DPS with no tank players in sight. This is obviously not conducive to playing an actual game of Overwatch. So any background tinkering to make teams more rounded sounds like a good idea in concept. However, there are downsides to that idea. Looking at just the offense category, so Doomfist, Genji, McCree, Pharah, Reaper, Soldier, Sombra and Tracer, there are many heroes there that have nothing to do with each other in terms of skill set. Some are hit scan, some are projectile, and despite the category name, not all of them are actually good at offense. They all do damage, sure, but so does every hero in the game in some way. We've argued that the hero categories don't make much sense. They're just a very loose guide for newer players. Guiding matchmaking on such terms would not be a fantastic idea. What about Hanzo and Widow? They do damage, but they're defensive heroes according to the categories, despite both being vastly superior when attacking because of their burst damage impact. So if this system were to be put in place, the definitions of what heroes fit into what categories, and even the structure of the categories themselves would have to be redrawn. Thankfully, Scott Mercer indicated that Blizzard are well aware of this. This would be a very complicated system, not a straight easy answer. Most heroes in Overwatch are hybrids of one sort or another, with very few clear-cut examples of a singular role present in their design. For example, support doesn't really just mean mercy. One-tricking is already a problem. If a sim one-trick takes up one of your team's support slots instead of a damage one, team comps will be wonky anyway. The goal must surely be to bring teams together who are more likely to work together and have complementary skill sets. But how does the system define your role? By your most played hero? The aggregate of your hero playtime across roles? These things are unknown. With that in mind, what happens to flex players in a more role-guided matchmaker? If players have multiple hours on multiple different heroes that span multiple roles, where does the matchmaker put them? Would the categories of player be drawn like so? Damage, tank, support and flex, with the matchmaker rounding teams out that way. But where would a Torb main fit in that? Damage or support? Torb is used in the support slot at the pro level in some contexts, but so is Sombra. That meme has been so divisive in the community, it serves as a good example of how difficult a system like this would be to implement. Perhaps it would be best to just put all hybrid heroes in the support part of the matchmaker. That way all your bases are covered. My head's hurting just thinking about this. Imagine what Blizzard must be feeling. There's also the inconvenient truth that the player-based distribution isn't even amongst all the roles anyway. There's way less tank players in general. Healers fall off at the top ranks. With role select, we'd all be waiting in queue to get one of those fabled tank mains we've heard so much about. Then there's the issue of having the game do this in the background versus it being a player choice. If a player is volunteering to limit their hero pool and find other people to complement them, that's one thing. It's another to have the game do it for you. I can see the latter being incredibly limiting. What happens if you have a sick Ana and Lucio, but your Tracer is pretty mean too? Well, if the game judges you as a support player based on playtime, you'd be pigeonholed into doing that and never expanding your skill set base. Now I admit, players already do that. Maining a hero as a concept runs quite deep in the player base, but it's actually quite counterproductive to facilitating competitive games, and that's where the rubber hits the road with this issue. Bad Overwatch competitive matches aren't bad simply because the teams aren't matched to be even in terms of skill set distribution. That happens because we we the players are like that ourselves. Most of us have a very narrow hero pool and tend to be reluctant to swap off our favourite heroes, despite it being in game-winning terms often the right thing to do. If the matchmaker were to play into that fact by very roughly distributing us evenly, it would solidify that behaviour, not challenge it. We'd all learn less because the reasons to swap would be even less than before. As it stands, losing games is not enough of an incentive to embrace tactical flexibility for a lot of players. Do we actually want a system that could compound that? My point being that Overwatch matches feel great when everyone is playing the actual game, with synergies, flexibility and team chemistry. It might feel like a good shortcut to that is to essentially impose structure on what players are grouped with others in an attempt to create better conditions. But with that structure comes rigidity, which might be okay if the players elect to do it to themselves, but I have concerns about a system that does that in unseen and undefined ways. But I could just be tinfoil hatting it, like the Overwatch equivalent of a prepper hoarding all my tinned SR waiting for the matchmaking apocalypse. One solution, I guess, would be to have separate ranks for each role. Rank per role could help players who get to a high rank on one role but cannot spend time learning another without tanking their rank. This too would help team comps be balanced, as it drastically limits match-made teams without tanks or healers, but also allows players to learn new roles without losing rank. Your role would be like a guild you join of sorts. You're a master support, but a diamond DPS, so you get matched accordingly, depending on what you queue as. Now this is obviously a much more complicated system. It would split the player base and make queue times longer. However, I get the impression most players would take that if the result was each match felt much better. Perhaps this system would benefit some roles more than others. Good tanks, for example, would probably rise in rank, as there's not that many of them, so when they got matched with equally good support and DPS, they'd win more games. But maybe there should be some benefit to playing less popular but important roles. What should be evident by now is that there is no easy answer to improving the rate of quality Overwatch matches. There's a reason Blizzard are cautious to embrace sweeping changes like role select. However, it's our position that you don't even need a role select function if the SR system ranked you based on winning, which it doesn't do in a direct way. It has all sorts of adjustments based on individual statistics that affect how much SR you lose and gain from wins and losses. If it ranked you purely based on winning, then people would actively do what's needed to win more games, not whatever they wanted, irrespective of whether all their counters were present in a given match. If people refused to do what's needed to win, they'd be punished by the system and consistently lose rank. One tricks would still exist, they'd just be at an appropriate rank for their win rate. People want to play the heroes that they want, and they totally should be able to. But a rank isn't actually just for their favourite hero, it's for how well they play the game of Overwatch in its entirety, or at least that should be what it's for. Any ranking system that rewards winning and punishes losing in a simple and direct way encourages dexterity and flexibility. What we have now teaches players to selectively specify in order to get good enough at the mechanics of a limited number of heroes to gain enough SR to rank up. That's why matches become uneven in terms of role distribution in the first place. If that were changed, then role select wouldn't be necessary. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a rating. If you never want to miss another video of ours again, please click the bell icon next to the subscribe button on our channel to join the notification squad. You'll be in good company. And finally, please follow the Your Overwatch Twitter. It's where you can find updates about new videos and other cool stuff. I've been Eddie the Chump, and until next time.